and thank you for joining us again. I'm Jonathan Bay, and this is Moor Talk. Now, I'm not a professional speaker or presenter. This program is to provide information. So those imperfections that you might find in the production, those speed bumps, those hiccups, you'll see editing marks and the rest of that. We'll hope that you'll be able to get over that, because what's important to take away is the information being provided. So having said that, let's begin.
I am not Latina. Yo no soy Latina. Simply speaking, the Spanish language does not make me part of Europe. Speaking English doesn't make me part of Europe. These two languages have been forced on my people for the last 500 years. Whether you are from Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guatemala, a reservation in Arizona, Mexico City, you have been kept ignorant, subservient to European culture. We are victims of colonialism. A colonialism that began in 1492. We are not the children of Cortez. We are not the people that came on La Pinta, La Niña, La Santa Maria. We have nothing to do with Spain. We are the indigenous people of this continent who are falsely called Hispanic and Latino as a way to kill our indigenous identity and history. We are supposed to disappear like the wind. We are supposed to shatter like the damn ground that we walk on. We are supposed to be turning into ashes. We're not supposed to exist. This is not part of the game plan for the Europeans. And here we are, ignorant of who we are, dyeing our hair blonde, hating who we are, putting blue-green eye contacts, watching novelas of a bunch of bleach blonde women being served by full-blooded indigenous people. Spanish is being glamorized as the most exotic language, and we take pride in it as if it belonged to us. As if our people weren't killed to speak Spanish, like if our people weren't forced to speak Spanish, like if our people weren't raped for the last 5 centuries to exist as Spanish-speaking slaves of Europeans. Whether you speak English or Spanish, those languages are not us and they do not define us. You see, before we spoke English and Spanish, we were actually speaking languages that reflected us, like Nahuatl, Yoemi, Quiche. We spoke languages that reflected who we were. We had languages, we had names that reflected who we were. We had a worldview that reflected on us, the reflection of the Creator. But these last 5 centuries of systematic ignorance and this education that only reinforces white supremacy has us confused, lost. But we are here. We are the survivors of the world's biggest genocide, where 95% of our population was wiped out. And yet we have no idea. We have no clue. Our parents don't know. They have been working so hard in the fields. A lot of them didn't even finish preschool, middle school. But here we are, survivors, in our own right, in our own land, homeless on our own land. We are Nicantlaca. We are the indigenous people of this continent. We have been divided by false borders. We have been divided by false languages. We are working in the Mexica movement to create an establishment, this unity, Tahuantinsuyu Nation, Suyu Nation, Suyu Nation, Mexica movement, all the way from North and South America. This is our continent, separated by European borders. We walk ignorantly of who we are. We look down on the ground and don't even realize that it is ours. We are the Nicantlaca people, and we are learning the truth. Mexica movement, we invite you. Join us in this liberation, the true decolonization of our mind. We are colonized. We do not accept it. We have to fight it, resist it with everything that you have. We are not products of Europe. We are not the children of Cortez. We are not the people that came on La Niña, La Pinta, La Santa Maria. We are the indigenous people that stood before them for 5 centuries. This is who we are. But we're taught to be fake white people, a fake imitation of who they are. But we're not. No matter how hard we try to be white, our ancient connection is far too deep to be bleached away by self-hate. Let's love ourselves. Let's learn who we are. Let's decolonize ourselves. Brothers and sisters, Mexican, Central American, South American, Native American, we are one. One people under occupation by European colonization. We are not Hispanic. We are not Latino. We are not Indians because we are not from India. We are the indigenous people from this land. We are Nican Tlaca. We are Nican Tlaca.
The Nican Tlaca movement helps us to appreciate even further that we are by no means nor measure a monochromatic amalgamation. The vast multi-spectrum complexity of our rich and multifaceted cultures, each unique within themselves, give rise to our collective comprehension of the complex nature of who we historically are across a varied treasure of our diverse social tapestry.
My nanny was white, so I totally get it. Like, I feel like I'm part white because of my nanny.
Okay, so I get that you're a proud white person, but you need to tone down your attire just a notch. This is a corporate office. This isn't a Blink-182 concert.
You speak English? Uh-huh. Thank God. Okay, can you talk to my accountant for me? I feel like he never understands me. Sure. This is my friend, okay? This is my friend. You're white, right? I hooked up with a white guy once. He was crazy.
Man, I totally have a thing for white girls. They're like, oh,
Is it true that all white people have small, quiet families? I wish I had that. How do you say your name again?
Macy?
I love how you pronounce it. One more time.
Macy?
God, I could never say it like that.
which do you prefer, Caucasian or European?
Oh my God, I hate spicy food. I feel like I was meant to be white, you know? Hey, are you watching Orange is the New Black?
Duh.
Do you love all the white women on there? So much attitude, right? Your cousin's having a sweet 16. Oh my gosh, I have to meet all your crazy aunts and uncles. Can I come?
I love the way that white people announce soccer. I love it. It's like, oh, they dribble past the defender and goal.
You're white? I'm sorry, you're just not what I picture when I think of a white person. That's crazy. Whoa, you went to Princeton? Oh, it's because you're white. That's how you got in. You are so pretty. You could totally pass for Latina. So are you like here, like legally? I'm sorry, I meant documented?
Now, the purpose of the last piece, so as not to be misconstrued into something else, all babies are beautiful, all children are beautiful, but it is incumbent upon our parents within our community to recognize that that is, in fact, a form of programming. When we are continuously provided that type of, especially in the newscasting, I know it's supposed to be a feel-good piece at the end that they show the pictures of the babies and the rest, but we see them all the time. Matter of fact, we see the royal family more often than we see the presidential family here in the United States, which is odd. But the point is that it leaves a psychological residue in the mind of our children, that there is an acceptable degree of, let's say, that erroneous entitledshipness, that they are entitled to be considered as important because they are from this English European lineage, heritage, and that for some reason it's okay for us to continuously be subjected to that as being the something that's supposed to make us feel good. I mean, like I said, all children are beautiful. All babies are beautiful. It's not until the adults, the parents, teach them to be ugly that they become different people. Now, it's up to us as adults to not act like minorities. Pick up the phone, recognize you can contact the networks and tell them, thank you very much, I've had enough, no more from me, thank you. You can do that. Now, speaking of the term minority, minority has nothing to do with numbers, as in the smaller group. Because, as an example, I even heard on the newscaster said that the minorities are now the majority. It doesn't make any sense. It's oxymoronic. How can a minority all of a sudden be the majority? The language doesn't even go together unless you're admitting that it's a status, that minority is a status opposed to something that denotes a number, for them to say the minority is now the majority. How can you be a majority minority unless you're talking about status? And it is, because minority means being unable to handle your affairs as an adult, that you must be thought of in your status as a minor would be considered, a childlike individual unable to take care of your own affairs as one would an adult. So don't get it twisted. Our prophet Noble Drew Ali identified that he came to us as a universal prophet, which means for all men. But he came to us because we needed him most. So that helps us to appreciate that all men are to be considered universally as equal to one another, and that we should love our fellow man, not just those that look like us, or those that we would consider as being part of our community. So when I show that, that's not to deliver negative feelings with respect to how we should think about European children. It's just to stimulate the adults within our community to recognize that that is also a form of programming, and that that programming is in fact impacting upon your children subconsciously. And that it is okay to pick up the phone, contact networks, and tell them that they should kind of dial that back a little bit. That point was pressed to help drive home the idea and the concept that it's you who has the power to effectuate the change that you wish to see. So exercise it. I'm going to switch gears for a moment to allow for you to have an opportunity to benefit from an audio clip that I'm certain you will enjoy. This is another learning moment from the MoorisDirectory.com.
United States Congressional Records, United States of America, Representative James Traficant Jr. of Ohio, addressing the House of Representatives, etc. Mr. Speaker, we We are here now in Chapter 11, and members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March the 9th, 1933, 48 Statute, 1 Public Law, 89-719, and declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent, HJR 192, 73rd Congress, in session, June the 5th, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, and all United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers. With the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. And this new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. And this act was instituted and established by transferring and replacing the office of the Secretary of the Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund, Public Law 94-564, page 8, Section HR 13955 reads in part, the United States Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Gold and silver was such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold or silver coins can be money in America. And since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a plain check was used as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes make no such promises and are not money, quote unquote. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government and is not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coins. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitutes. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper in debt. And we the people are no longer have any money, and most Americans have never been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt, along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation and devaluation of currency. And whenever there's an increase in the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply of money and movement, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing cost of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills, and a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. And there is a fundamental difference between paying and discharging a debt, quote unquote. To pay a debt, you must pay with the value of substance, i.e. gold, silver, barter, or commodity. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substance. And no contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control of the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice because they have so much wealth already. And that's by virtue of those Federal Reserve notes. And their lust for power and control, and since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fates of nations. And the Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers and a common law trust, quote unquote, use the common law trust, quote unquote, as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust, quote unquote. And the U.S. Congress has passed a law making it illegal for any legal person, quote unquote, to duplicate a quote-unquote joint stock trust in 1873. And the Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870, although post facto laws are strictly prohibited by the Constitution. See Section 19.3. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender and or maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States, operating exclusively under Admiralty maritime law, and the lender or underwriter bears the risk, and the maritime law compelling specific performance in paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it as security by the lender or underwriter. And the several Federal Reserve Acts stipulated that the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold, and there was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. And prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear, allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders, held legal title. And the U.S. citizen, tenant, franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his or her birth certificate. And in 1933, the federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their subjects. The 14th Amendment U.S. citizen to the Federal Reserve System. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit money substitute it needed. Like any other debtor, the Federal United States government had to assign a collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. And since the Federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizens, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. And they also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national parks, forests, birth certificates, and non-profit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as payment to the international bankers. and unwittingly America has returned to its pre-American Revolution feudal roots, whereby the land is held by a sovereign and the common people had no rights to hold a allodial title to property. Once again, we the people are tenants and sharecroppers, renting our own property from the sovereign in the guise of the Federal Reserve Bank, and we the people have exchanged one master for another. And this has been going on for over 80 years now without informed knowledge of the American people and without a voice protesting loud enough. Now it is easy to grasp why Americans is so fundamentally bankrupt. And why don't more people own their properties outright? And why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel like you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? And we are reaping what we have sown. And the result of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and the foreclosure of American property, precious liberties, and the way of life. And few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The federal United States is bankrupt, and our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforcing the paying of it. And America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. And this is an undeclared economic war, bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Wake up, America, and take back your country. And that's James Tropicon, except on the floor of the House of Representatives, and is documented.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that.
We have a privately owned central bank system disguised as a government-owned system.
There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter. What the relationships are don't frankly matter.